Hey, Tarun Stevenson here for Calmer Classrooms, and in this episode we're going to be talking about consistency in your behaviour management. Come on, let's get into it. Alright, today we're going to be talking about consistency, why it is absolutely crucial in your managing of the classroom. Now, before I get into it, make sure you subscribe or follow on whichever channel you are tuning in on, and give us a like or a comment if you're enjoying the content. We'd love to hear from you. Alright, so consistency, why is it important? Well, consistency basically means that you enforce the rules for all students in the same way. To be really careful that you are not showing preferential treatment or you're not showing a targeted approach to one or a few students in the class. This is really important for a couple of reasons. Is one, for the students that misbehave or the students that get caught out, if they believe that you are being unfair in the way that you are managing them, you are more likely to get big escalations, you're more likely to get arguments, you're more likely to get disrespectful behaviour, because if they feel an injustice has been done, they need to write it and they will try to vehemently oppose what you're doing. But if they feel you're being consistent, you're dealing with behaviour in the same way with everybody, then they're more likely to cop it on the chin. It's also important that even if you have some good students who, most of the time they don't muck around, if you are consistent, well, what you will find is that it doesn't take many times to pull them back into line. If you let their behaviour slide or you give them preferential treatment for whatever reason, what you will find is sometimes that behaviour can grow and become a problem for the class, and by the time you actually do address it, it becomes quite hard to manage. Let me give you an example of when I was a behaviour advisory teacher. One of my jobs was all the students who were being exited from the class would be sent down to me. They would get what was called a red card because the teacher felt that they were no longer able to participate in the class, and they would come down to me, and then I'd have to figure out what had happened, whether they would be returned to class, sent to the principal, or stay with me. And one of the most regular situations that I had coming into my office was the well-known naughty kids would very frequently be sent down to my office, and one of the first things they would always say is, "I don't understand why she gave me this red card when there were 3 other students in the class doing the same thing as me, but they never got done, they never got pinged for it." And so the sense of injustice for that student is very high. And so when I had conversations about restoring the relationship or apologizing or going back to class, of course this student was usually very, very reluctant. And so what that would do is that would lead to a broken relationship between the student and the teacher. Well, the next time that student goes in the class, they're going to be gunning for the teacher. They're going to be looking for ways to disrupt the class and make it more difficult for the teacher. Well, if you're being inconsistent and you're just targeting one student, what you're going to find is that in the long run, it's going to backfire on you. It's going to come back to bite you, because that student will come back to get justice for the injustice that they perceive. And so that's why it's really important that you maintain consistency in the way in which you deal with students. The other thing about consistency is that kids who are frequently disruptive or frequently off task or misbehaving, they're already on your radar. You're already hyper aware of their tendency to misbehave. And so sometimes it can become very easy for you to just jump on it because you see it really quickly. You're already seeing their behavior before it even starts sometimes. Because you're hyper aware, there's a tendency that you will get onto them more often than, say, somebody who's normally a good child. If you've got a student that finishes all their work but they talk non-stop and disrupt the other kids, your tendency is to say, "Oh, well, they did their work, I can't really punish them." Well, if you've got a rule about talking, you've got to give them some kind of consequence. You've got to follow through with that, because it sends a wrong signal to the kids that get in trouble for talking, but it also sends a wrong signal to them because they're not respecting everybody else in the classroom. Just because they've finished their work doesn't mean they get to disrupt everybody else. And so just be really thinking about maintaining consistency, and you have to watch yourself. You have to pull yourself up, because it's easy to jump on the child that's on your radar. It's very easy to forget or overlook the child that is not normally on your radar. But if you want an environment where all the kids trust you and all the kids have good relationship with you, then you need to maintain that consistency at all times. Well, I hope that was really helpful for you. And if you've enjoyed this, why don't you give us a comment or a like, or maybe even a share if there's somebody that you think would benefit from this content. If you're listening on a podcast, we'd love to have your review on iTunes or Stitcher. And until next time, I'm Tarun Stevenson for Karma Classrooms.